Everyone thought Isabella Hart had everything figured out. At 28, she worked as a creative director for a fashion brand in the city. Her social media showed rooftop dinners, weekend trips, soft candlelight, and a boyfriend who looked like he had stepped out of a magazine. Daniel Reed was charming, polished, and always perfectly dressed. When they walked into a room together, people noticed. They looked like a power couple. They looked happy. But appearances can be carefully arranged, like furniture in a showroom. The truth lived in small moments no one else saw. It lived in the way Daniel corrected her stories mid-sentence. In the way he laughed when she shared an idea that did not impress him. In the way he decided which friends were worth keeping and which were a waste of time. It lived in the way Isabella slowly stopped arguing back. In the beginning, Daniel had been different. He sent long messages. He planned surprise dates. He said she was brilliant, different, refreshing. He told her he had never met someone who understood him the way she did. She believed him. She had always believed in love that felt strong and certain. The change was gradual. So gradual she did not notice it at first. "You're too sensitive," he would say when she told him a joke hurt her feelings. "I'm just trying to help you improve," he would explain when he criticized her clothes, her makeup, her voice in meetings. "Why do you always overthink things?" He would sigh when she asked for reassurance. The words were calm. Almost reasonable. That was what made them dangerous. 3 years passed like that. 3 years of small compromises. Isabella told herself relationships required effort. She told herself no one was perfect. She told herself love meant staying. One Friday night, they were invited to a company gala. Isabella wore a deep blue dress she had chosen carefully. She had spent an hour getting ready. When she walked into the living room, Daniel looked at her and paused. "You're wearing that?" he asked. Her smile faded slightly. "Do you not like it?" "It's fine," he replied, shrugging. "Just thought you'd choose something more elegant." Elegant. The word stayed with her all evening. At the event, Daniel talked about his latest project. He introduced her as "my girlfriend, Isabella," but he did not mention her promotion last month. When someone complimented her campaign design, Daniel laughed lightly. "She works too much," he said. "I keep telling her to relax." She stood there smiling, feeling smaller by the second. Later that night, back in the apartment, she finally spoke. "Why do you do that?" she asked quietly. "Do what?" Daniel loosened his tie, not looking at her. "Make jokes about me. Downplay my work." He rolled his eyes. It was harmless. It didn't feel harmless. "You're reading too much into it again," he said. "You always do this after events. You create problems." The conversation ended the way it always did. With her apologizing. With him shaking his head like she had disappointed him, but something inside her shifted. The next few weeks felt heavier. She noticed how tired she was all the time. Not physically, but emotionally. She measured her words before speaking. She checked his mood before sharing news. She avoided certain topics because she knew how he would react. One evening, she found an old notebook while cleaning. It was filled with poetry she had written in college. Dreams about traveling. Plans to start her own creative studio one day. She sat on the floor reading page after page, barely recognizing the girl who wrote those words. That girl sounded brave. Hopeful. Certain of herself. When had she stopped sounding like that? The apartment door opened. Daniel walked in, speaking on the phone, his voice sharp and controlled. He ended the call and glanced at her on the floor. "What are you doing?" "Just reading something old." He stepped closer and picked up the notebook. He flipped through a few pages and smirked. "You still write this stuff?" Her chest tightened. "I used to." "It's cute," he said. "But you should focus on realistic goals. Poetry doesn't pay the bills." She watched him drop the notebook back onto the table like it meant nothing. That night, she lay awake staring at the ceiling. She felt a quiet ache she could not ignore anymore. It was not about one comment or one argument. It was about who she had become. A week later, she met her friend Maya for coffee. Maya studied her carefully. "You look exhausted," Maya said gently. "I'm fine." "No, you're not." Isabella tried to smile, but her eyes burned. "Relationships are just hard." Maya leaned forward. "Hard is different from draining." The word landed heavily. Draining. On the way home, Isabella replayed that word in her mind. She thought about the last time she felt truly light. Truly confident. She could not remember. That night, Daniel came home late. He did not apologize. He did not explain. He simply sat on the couch and scrolled through his phone. She stood in the kitchen, staring at the counter. Her heart beat loudly in her chest. "Daniel," she called softly. "What? Are you happy with me?" He looked up, confused. "Where is this coming from? Just answer." He sighed. "Why do you need constant validation?" "I'm not asking for validation. I'm asking if you're happy." He stood and walked toward her. "You always do this. You pick a random moment and turn it into a drama." Her hands trembled slightly. I don't feel good anymore. Not in this relationship. He laughed under his breath. So what? You want to break up because you don't feel good? His tone carried disbelief. Dismissal. In that moment, she saw the pattern clearly. Every time she tried to speak, he made her question herself. Every time she expressed pain, he turned it into weakness. I don't think we're good for each other, she said, her voice steadier now that he stared at her as if she had said something ridiculous. You're being emotional. Maybe, she replied. But I'm serious. Silence filled the room. You won't find someone who puts up with your moods the way I do, he said coldly. The words hit her like a slap. Not loud. Not physical. But sharp. She looked at him, really looked at him, and realized something painful. He did not see her as a partner. He saw her as someone to manage. Her fear slowly turned into clarity. I don't need someone to put up with me, she said quietly. I need someone who respects me. Daniel scoffed. You're making a mistake. Maybe she was, but staying felt worse. She walked into the bedroom and pulled a small suitcase from the closet. Her movements were calm, almost detached. She packed essentials. Clothes. Her laptop. The old poetry notebook. Daniel stood in the doorway, watching. So you're actually leaving? Yes. For what? Some fantasy? For peace, she answered. He shook his head. You'll regret this. She zipped the suitcase and faced him. For the first time in years, she did not feel smaller under his gaze. I already regret staying this long, she said. The words surprised even her. She walked past him, her heart pounding. Each step toward the door felt heavy but certain. When she opened it, cool night air rushed in. The hallway light flickered softly. Behind her, Daniel's voice echoed once more. You're overreacting. She paused for a second. Then she stepped out and closed the door. The sound of the latch clicking into place felt final. I in the elevator, her hands began to shake. Tears filled her eyes, but they did not fall yet. She pressed the button for the lobby and leaned against the mirrored wall. Her reflection looked pale but determined. When the elevator doors opened, she walked into the night. The city was alive with noise and lights. Cars passed. Strangers laughed on sidewalks. Life continued, unaware that her world had just shifted. She inhaled deeply. For 3 years, she had been adjusting herself to fit into someone else's comfort. Now she had no idea what came next. And that was terrifying, but beneath the fear, there was something else, relief, not loud. Not dramatic. Just a quiet space inside her chest where tension used to live. She pulled out her phone. Her fingers hovered over one contact. For a moment, she hesitated, then she pressed call. The line rang once. Twice. Isabella, a calm voice answered. She swallowed. Hi. There was a pause, filled with unspoken understanding. Are you okay? He asked gently. She looked up at the city skyline, lights stretching endlessly ahead. I think, she said slowly, I just made the hardest decision of my life. And for the first time in a long time, it felt like the right one. Ethan Cole did not sleep the night Isabella called him. After she ended the call, he remained standing by the tall glass window in his penthouse office, looking down at the city lights far below. His reflection stared back at him, calm, controlled, successful. The world knew him as the CEO who built a technology empire before 35. Investors trusted him. Employees admired him. Business magazines called him disciplined and visionary. But none of those titles mattered in that moment. All he could hear was Isabella's voice saying, it's over. For 10 years, he had trained himself not to imagine this moment. He met her during their second year at university. He had been sitting alone in the library with a worn notebook, sketching out ideas for an app that no one believed in. His classmates laughed at his ambition. Professors advised him to focus on something safer. He kept his plans mostly to himself. But Isabella had noticed. She sat across from him one afternoon, surrounded by literature books, her hair tied back loosely, her eyes curious. She asked what he was writing. Most people asked in a polite way and lost interest when he explained. She did not. She listened carefully. She asked questions. She said, it sounds impossible. That's why you should try. No one had ever said that to him before. They started studying together. Coffee turned into long conversations about dreams and fears. She told him she wanted to create stories that made people feel less alone. He told her he wanted to build something that would change how people connected. They were young, hopeful, certain the world would open for them. He fell in love quietly. It happened in small moments. The way she bit her lip when thinking. The way she defended her friends fiercely. The way she believed in him when he doubted himself. He never announced his feelings, never made a dramatic confession. He simply carried them. During their final year, his first startup failed. He invested everything, time, savings, pride. It collapsed in 3 months. His partners left. Debt followed. He stopped answering calls. He stopped leaving his apartment. She showed up anyway. She brought groceries. She sat on the floor with him and said, failure doesn't mean you're finished. She refused to let him disappear into shame. When he finally tried again, it was because she convinced him he still could. By the time his second company began to grow, she had started dating Daniel. Ethan remembered the day she introduced them. Daniel's handshake was firm, confident. He had the easy charm of someone who knew how to win rooms. Ethan smiled politely, forcing his chest not to tighten. He told himself it was fine. She looked happy, and he wanted her happy, even if it was not with him. So he buried his feelings under work. He expanded his company. He hired teams. He moved into bigger offices. Investors lined up. Awards followed. Interviews filled his calendar. Success became his distraction, but Isabella remained constant in his life. They met for coffee sometimes. They texted on birthdays. She attended his company launch event. He congratulated her when she became creative director. On the surface, they were just old friends. Underneath, he carried 10 years of silent love. Over time, he began to notice subtle changes in her. Her laughter felt measured. She paused before speaking, as if editing herself. When Daniel joined them, she seemed smaller somehow. Ethan observed without interfering. He told himself it was not his place. Yet the signs grew harder to ignore. One evening at a charity gala, he watched Daniel interrupt her mid-sentence. Isabella smiled and let it pass. Ethan's jaw tightened. Later, when Daniel walked away to take a call, Ethan leaned closer and asked quietly, "Are you okay?" She smiled too quickly. Of course. He knew that smile. It was the one she used when she did not want to worry anyone. Still, he stayed silent. He had built his life on discipline. On control. He did not believe in reckless moves. Confessing love to a woman in a relationship felt selfish. So he convinced himself patience was noble. Years passed. His company expanded internationally. He bought a penthouse overlooking the city. Headlines praised his leadership. People assumed a man like him must have endless romantic options. They did not know he compared every woman he met to someone who was never truly available. He dated occasionally. Short dinners. Polite conversations. Nothing stayed. His heart had chosen long ago. Then came the night Isabella called. Her voice was steady but thin, like glass stretched too far. She did not cry. She simply said she had left Daniel. Ethan felt two emotions at once, concern and something dangerously close to hope. He kept his voice calm. He asked if she was safe. If she had somewhere to stay. She assured him she did. When the call ended, he stood motionless for a long time. This was the moment he had imagined and feared. If he moved too fast, he could hurt her. If he stayed silent again, he might lose his chance forever. The next morning, he cancelled 3 meetings. His assistant looked surprised. He never cancelled. He drove himself instead of using his driver. He needed the quiet. As he sat in traffic, memories flooded him. The library. The failed startup. The way she once told him, "You're going to change the world." No one had believed in him the way she did. He realized something important. His love for her had never been about possession. It was about respect. About admiration. About wanting her to feel valued. She had excitedly told him about Daniel asking her out officially. He swallowed his words and congratulated her instead. That was the day he chose silence. Now silence felt like cowardice. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through old photos. There she was at his first office opening, clapping in the back row. There she was at a small rooftop party, laughing freely before things changed. He paused at a photo taken on the library steps. They were sitting side by side, shoulders almost touching. Both young. Both unaware of how complicated life would become. He printed that photo on his way home. By evening, he stood outside her new apartment building. His heart pounded harder than it ever had before a business pitch. He had negotiated million-dollar deals without fear. Yet this felt different. This felt fragile. He reminded himself of one rule: do not take advantage of her vulnerability. When she opened the door, she looked tired but lighter. There were no dark circles from crying, no dramatic breakdown. Just a quiet exhaustion. "Hi," she said softly. "Hi." He stepped inside. The apartment was smaller than the one she shared with Daniel. Boxes were stacked near the wall. A single lamp lit the room warmly. They sat facing each other. For a moment, neither spoke. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Strange," she admitted. "Scared. But also calm." He nodded. "That makes sense." He wanted to tell her everything at once. 10 years of feelings pressed against his ribs. But he forced himself to breathe. "I need to say something," he began. She looked at him. "Curious, I've cared about you for a long time." Her eyes softened slightly, but she did not interrupt. "For 10 years, he continued. "Since university." The words felt heavy and freeing at the same time. "I never said anything because you were with someone. And I respected that. I still do." She inhaled slowly. "I'm not here to rush you," he said quickly. "You just ended something important. You deserve space." "I just couldn't stay silent anymore." He handed her the printed photo. She stared at it, surprised. "You kept this?" "Always." The room felt smaller, charged with emotion. I don't want to be your rebound, he added gently. If there's ever a chance for us, I want it to be real. Chosen. Not convenient. Her eyes glistened, but she smiled faintly. Why didn't you tell me before? Because loving you quietly felt better than risking losing you completely. The honesty hung between them. He did not reach for her. He did not make grand promises. He simply let the truth exist. For the first time in 10 years, his heart was no longer hiding, and as she looked at him with something new in her expression, something thoughtful, something tender, he realized this was the real risk, not business, not money, but love finally stepping out of the shadows. Isabella sat on her sofa, clutching the old photograph Ethan had handed her. The library steps where they had laughed 10 years ago seemed almost like another life now. Her chest tightened with memories she hadn't allowed herself to fully feel for years. She had just escaped a relationship that had drained her spirit, and yet, here was Ethan, calm, steady, patient, standing in her living room, his eyes fixed on hers with a depth that made her breath hitch. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The apartment smelled faintly of the candle she had left burning. Outside, the city hummed with life. Car horns, distant laughter, the occasional siren, it all felt like it was happening in someone else's world. Inside, time had slowed. She noticed the way Ethan's jaw was set but relaxed, the way his hands rested loosely on his knees, the faint tension in his shoulders, a shadow of nerves she hadn't seen in him before. He was always composed, always in control, yet now he looked human. Vulnerable. Isabella, he began, his voice low but steady. I've wanted to tell you something for a long time. He paused, and she felt the weight of his next words before they even came. For 10 years. Her eyes widened slightly. 10 years. 10 years of unseen moments, quiet admiration, patient love. She tried to swallow the sudden lump in her throat. 10, she whispered, her voice trembling. He nodded. Since the library. Since you told me I could change the world, even when everyone else doubted me. That was the day I realized. I felt more for you than friendship. More than I ever thought I could feel. Her hands gripped the photograph tighter. She remembered that day perfectly. She had laughed at some joke he made about starting a company that would probably fail. She had teased him, told him he was ambitious and crazy in the same breath. He had laughed along, but there had been something earnest in his eyes, something she hadn't noticed then. Something steady. Something patient. I didn't tell you before, Ethan continued, because I respected your life. Because you were happy, or at least I thought you were. I didn't want to complicate things, to make you question your choices. I thought loving you quietly was enough. She swallowed hard, blinking rapidly. Enough. His love had been enough. And yet, she had never noticed, never realized, never felt it in the way she could now. A warmth began spreading through her chest, a mixture of relief, recognition, and the smallest spark of hope. I didn't want to pressure you, he said, leaning forward slightly, his eyes locked on hers. I only wanted to be honest now, because I can't stay silent anymore. Because I can't imagine a life where I don't tell you the truth. Her mind raced. 10 years of silent admiration, of gestures unnoticed, of patience she had never asked for but had unknowingly depended on. She thought of all the moments when Daniel had belittled her, when she had doubted herself, when she had felt small. And now here was Ethan, steady as always, acknowledging her worth. Seeing her. Truly seeing her. She wanted to speak, but the words felt tangled. She wanted to ask why now, why not sooner? But she also realized she didn't want an explanation. She wanted him. Not in a reckless, dramatic way. Not as a rebound or a fix for the heartbreak she had just left behind. She wanted him because he had always been there. Because he had always been steady. Because he had always chosen her in the quiet moments when no one else noticed. Ethan reached into his pocket and pulled out something else. Not a ring, not yet. A folded letter, old and slightly worn. He handed it to her gently. I wrote this years ago, he said. I never sent it. I think you should have it now. She unfolded the letter carefully. It was filled with his neat handwriting, recounting small memories, the library, their walks around campus, the first time he tried to pitch a business idea and failed, the way she had encouraged him anyway. Every word spoke of attention, of care, of a love that had quietly endured years of uncertainty. Tears pricked her eyes, but she did not let them fall. She wanted to memorize this moment, every word, every feeling, without letting it slip away. I never thought I could wait this long, Ethan said softly, almost to himself. But I wanted you to choose freely. I wanted you to come to this moment without feeling pressured, without feeling like you had to settle. You deserve that, Isabella. You always have. Her lips parted slightly. I don't know what to say, she admitted. Her voice was fragile but honest. All these years? I didn't know. You don't have to say anything, he replied, leaning back slightly but keeping his eyes on hers. I just wanted you to know. And I want you to know that you've never been too much. You've never been dramatic or difficult. You've always been more than enough. The words washed over her. She realized, in a way she hadn't allowed herself before, that she had spent so many years doubting her worth. Not because she was lacking, but because she had been with someone who could not see her, someone who had dimmed her light without ever noticing. And now Ethan, calm, patient, honest, was holding up her worth like a mirror. Showing her how valuable she had always been. She stood slowly, unsure at first, then with growing certainty. She walked toward him, feeling a flutter of nerves and excitement in her chest. I think I've loved you too, she confessed quietly, almost as if speaking it aloud made it more real. Maybe not clearly. Maybe not loudly. But steadily. Always. Ethan's eyes softened, a gentle smile forming. I had hoped, he said simply. I always hoped. But I never wanted to assume. I wanted you to feel it too. The apartment was quiet. No dramatic music, no sudden fairy tale declarations. Just two people standing together, acknowledging a truth that had been growing for a decade. And in that quiet, something fragile but undeniable began to grow, a connection not built on need or desperation, but on understanding, respect, and long-standing affection. I don't want to rush anything, Isabella said, her voice steady now, filled with a newfound calm. But I don't want to lose another 10 years either. Ethan nodded. Then we take it one step at a time, he said. His hand hovered near hers, not pressing, not demanding. Just there, offering a choice, giving space, respecting the pace of a heart that had been through so much. For the first time in a long time, Isabella did not feel small. She did not feel diminished. She did not feel like she had to shrink herself to fit someone else's comfort. She felt seen. She felt heard. She felt chosen. Outside, the city lights shimmered, casting a soft glow through the apartment windows. Inside, two people who had waited patiently, who had loved quietly and carefully, began to explore what it could mean to finally be together. Not in a rush. Not in a haze of heartbreak. But with open eyes and open hearts, ready to choose each other every day. And in that soft, unspoken way, the story of 10 years of silent love transformed into the possibility of something real, something steady, something lasting. For the first time, Isabella felt what it meant to be truly appreciated, not for what she could do for someone else, but for exactly who she was. She smiled softly, and Ethan returned it with warmth that spoke of relief, hope, and patience finally rewarded. There was no rush. No grand gestures. Just two people, quietly, honestly, and fully choosing each other at last. And for the first time in a long time, Isabella realized that love could be gentle, patient, and enduring, and that she deserved nothing less. The city continued its endless hum outside, but inside that apartment, a new chapter had begun. One where love was not silent, one where hearts were finally aligned, and one where Isabella's spirit, long held back, could finally soar. It was not a story of instant happiness. It was a story of waiting, endurance, and the slow, beautiful discovery that the right person can appear at the right moment, sometimes after 10 long years, but always worth the wait. And in that quiet living room, amidst soft lamplight and the faint aroma of coffee, Isabella and Ethan took the first step together, not as past lovers, not as friends, but as two hearts finally free to love fully, carefully, and openly, ready to face the world together.